Hello, we're going to talk about organization in sewing labs, in your sewing area. And the very first thing we're going to talk about is how to kind of help yourself not be running around with the chicken with your head cut off because so many people want your help. So to kind of help with this, the rule of ask 3 before me, I'm sure you've heard of it before, but basically ask 3 students before you ask me, just to kind of help with if they can solve the problem on their own or with another student, to go ahead and do so that you can save your time for people that have the big problems that cannot be solved on their own. Something that helps you be prepared is to have either a fanny pack or like an apron to kind of keep things like your seam ripper or a pair of scissors and maybe some extra thread, just different things that you're going to need, helping students from going from one student to another student and helping them with their sewing projects. It also is very helpful if you create a wait list of students that are needing help so that you know where to go next, and students can actually go and start working on other stuff while they're waiting on you to help them with this problem. They could either start cleaning the area, or they could get on and try to find their next project so that is already done and they don't have to spend the day finding their next project. Okay, so some extra things that you need to keep on hand for your students, and that is things like bobbins, thread. A lot of times they go and they may get the fabric, but they don't buy the thread that they need. Also, just some extra fabric that can be used just as cutting practice with the rotary cutter. But also, sometimes kids cannot afford to buy fabric, or they just keep forgetting to buy fabric. And so this kind of helps with that. One way to get extra fabric is if you can get the word out to your community that you need extra fabric. A lot of times they're going to bring in the fabric that you need. In the 13 years that I taught, I never actually bought any extra fabric, but I always had a large amount of fabric simply because the community kept it supplied. And we're in a small community, but the community loved to help in giving any extra fabric that they could. The last thing is project directions. Keep extra project directions so that you can give those to the students that are not knowing where to do and they've already spent their one day looking for projects. And I even had one student the last year that I taught, she did not like to find directions for projects. She would rather me just give her projects to do rather than have to find projects. And that worked out well for both of us because I had a good amount of project directions left over from what other kids have done. So some organization tips for your classroom. If you can make it to where every kid has their own drawer or own little tote, that is pretty helpful to keep their stuff together. And for instance, like their directions, their thread, their bobbin, their fabric, right? All that stuff can take together, and then they can take that tote or that drawer every day and take it to their sewing machine and work with it, and it's just that much easier for them to clean up because they can just put everything back in that tote and then take it back to where it belongs. So it made things just really handy for them to have their own individual drawer or tote, whatever it may be. Also having station cubbies. So little boxes or little things like these that they can put, you can have 2 or 3 pairs of scissors in, 2 or 3 seam rippers, maybe some thread, some bobbins, some just different things that you're going to need. A little, rulers, different things. And if you take that and you put it in a group of people sewing, so if they're all sitting around a table, you can put that in the middle, and that helps keep them in that area and not running back and forth going to the cabinet to try to get what they need. It's all right there and they can share it, and it all can be put back in the cubby at the end of the hour and then put back in the cabinet as one. It also prevents the kids from trying to hide scissors and seam rippers in their totes, so they're not trying to keep it for themselves the entire time. I never had that many scissors or seam rippers in my class to give each student one, And so it was a constant battle of trying to figure out who had the seam ripper at that time. So the last thing we're going to talk about is cleaning the area of the sewing lab and also cleaning the sewing machines. I try to clean the sewing machines. It depends on how often you use your sewing machines, but I try to get my sewing machines cleaned professionally every other year. Sometimes I did it every year if I had a lot of sewing students, but more often than not, I just did it every other year because it does get expensive. The sewing areas, I had students go in and sweep underneath the sewing machines and clean off the area of the sewing machines to try to get all the extra pins and everything that were dropped. I try to get that cleaned about once a week. But I also, me as a teacher, I had to go in and organize the cabinets. I did have big labels on the drawer of what everything is. So it'd be like sewing scissors, paper scissors, seam rippers. That having those big huge labels on the drawers really helped minimize the cleaning that I had to do when I went in to clean. But I did have to go in and clean about every couple months just to try to reorganize everything. So that is the end of organization within your sewing labs, and I will see you on the next lesson. Thank you.